Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Welcome back to Daily DVR. My name is Axel, and of course, you can find out more about us at dvrpodcast.com. I'd like to start out the show with a shout out to our wonderful patrons. Thank you so much. Love to you all. You can join us, of course, at patreon.com/DVR. And I'd suggest you do so because Mindhunter is coming back. Heath and I have already recorded 3 of the final 5 episodes of season 2. And those episodes will be dropping first way early on the Patreon. So that whole season is going to be up on the Patreon before we even put it on the regular feed. I hope that does get people to come on in, join the Patreon, and give daddy some moolah, as they like to say. But we have a great show today. We have a great guest, of course. My guest today is Michael Aaron, the host of One Mic. You can check him out on YouTube. I'm going to put the links in the show notes. He talks about TV and film. He also talks about UFC, right? So you tell us, Mike.
Yeah. So the whole concept and the idea behind One Mic was that I wanted something to where, if somebody's going, hey, I just finished binging Breaking Bad. What should I watch next? I want to have content out there to let people know, like, okay, this is the thing that I think is good. This is the thing that I think is bad. And the idea is like, if you think my opinions are worth listening to, then you can use my channel to decide, okay, what's that next thing I want to watch? What's the thing that I thought I wanted to watch that I should avoid? So I cover TV, I cover movies, and then I also just kind of do like a fight talk thing weekly where I cover whatever UFC event happened that past weekend, or if there was like a big boxing fight, I'll probably talk about that too. And they're all kind of brief episodes, somewhere I will say average about 15 minutes, so nothing too long. And then there's an audio podcast version of it as well. It's the exact same content.
That's awesome, dude. Well, I've been really enjoying it. I've even listened to your fight stuff because I don't I was into boxing back in the day, but I don't really I've tried to watch some UFC and MMA type stuff. It's just a whole different world. I think we've talked about it before, but I wanted to be interested, so I listened to you talk about it. It's fun. I think you got a great show, and today we're going to have a great show. We're going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is kind of a companion pod to a show I did with Justin Thomas after the first episode of WandaVision. And Mike, of course, covered all of WandaVision. And I have just really gotten into the MCU lately, which is kind of it's kind of been like a staged progression for me. And I'll get into that, kind of my Marvel journey. But before we do that, I'd like to hear from you, Mike. I'd like to know about your Marvel journey, like starting from a kid. Like, were you really into the comics? Because I know I wanted to have you on because you have such a passion for this stuff. And I love the way you talked about WandaVision because I thought that I don't know, man, it seems to touch you in a way that means something and it's important to you. And I think in today's day and age, there's a lot of people arguing about the business side of the superhero movies, and they lose sight of the pure joy of experiencing cinema. And sorry, Martin Scorsese, I said cinema. Even though I love you, Marty, you're the best.
Yeah.
But that's what it's about, and that's why I like to have you on. Not only are you awesome, but I think you have really like it kind of touches your soul when you talk about this stuff, man. It really does, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel that passion about any kind of television and movies. Like, it's just it's just something that I was passionate about from the age of like 6 years old. Just wanting to watch movies that I wasn't old enough to watch. So it's something that's always been a thing that's been important to me. But specifically as it pertains to Marvel or comic books in general, my fandom goes back to about that same point too. My father was a big comic book guy. He had comics from like, hey, I've got SpiderMan #1, and like he had,
That's awesome.
all that old shit from like the 50s and 60s and whatnot. And so, of course, if you have a parent who's into something like that heavily, of course, your kid is going to naturally get into it as well. So that became a thing for us. We would constantly go to the comic book store. We would, get the latest issues of the things that we read, which generally, it always, what I wanted always mirrored what my father liked. So we were heavy into X-Men stuff, X-Men,
Okay.
X Factor, X Force, whatever.
Yes.
We were heavy into that stuff. That was the bulk of what we got, was like all the different variations of X-Men. And then, your standard, Batman was always a big one. SpiderMan was always a big one. And, through that, I became a big collector. I had a shit ton of comics, man, just boxes and boxes full. And it's transitioned into adulthood. I got out of actually reading the comics, but it was more of like, once you become an adult, time becomes a factor. I don't have as much time to just sit around and read. Like if I wish I did, but I don't read books. I don't read shit. I just don't have time. But I got out of it. I got back into it briefly when DC rebooted for the 87th time, and they did it was called Rebirth, and this was probably
I remember
2-3 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I started buying them again. Certain ones that I knew I liked, like like the Flash, and I was reading them as best I could, but again, it became one of those things where it's like, hey, I'm buying them every week or every 2 weeks out of habit, and I'm not reading them, so I just had to stop.
Yeah,
So,
they get expensive.
Yeah. It's like, especially as they add more, and you want to get into those. Now it's like, okay, now every Wednesday I got to pick up 5-6 different books. I'm like, it gets a little crazy. And that's generally my history as far as like how I got into like the films and television, and the film and television, the MCU stuff, that just came organically out of like, oh wow, now there's hey, there's an Iron Man movie. Let me check
they're
it out.
finally doing it, right?
And then as they continue to do them, and they took it seriously. It wasn't just some like, hey, let's just put out some shit with Tony Stark in. It's like they took it seriously. They had a long-term plan. The films were good by and large. So and then it just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. And how old are you?
39.
You're 39. Okay, I'm 40. I'm gonna be 47. I'm 46. I don't want to jump the gun. I keep on saying I'm
turned 39. So
happy birthday.
Well, not that close, but January. But yeah.
Oh, okay. I probably said happy birthday already and forgot.
Probably.
So is life. That's awesome. That's a cool story, man. So that's something that you shared with your father.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have that experience. My dad was not, comic books were on his radar, of course. He grew up in New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not that much older than you. So obviously both our fathers were alive when comic books were a bit younger, when comic books were popular. They're probably roughly within 10 years or so of each other. And he was really more into baseball and baseball cards and stuff.
My dad was equal into both.
Okay. See, my dad, he didn't really get that much into comics, because I think he was also had a childhood that was much more like real. I don't know how to say it, man. Let's just say this. If you've seen the beginning of Goodfellas, that was like my dad's childhood. So he had a little bit of a different life growing up. Gotcha. He was like running book and stuff and betting on horses, not looking at comics.
That's wild.
But I love comics, but I was mostly a DC fan. I loved Batman the most. I have every single Batman issue for like 10 years. I loved when, I remember when Michael Keaton Batman came out, and I was like, oh my God, I was collecting the comic, and I was so excited. And I never really got too into Marvel. I read them all. And when you're a comic fan, you end up picking them up, and there's crossovers and such. And there were certain Marvel characters I enjoyed, but I was never as into Marvel as DC. And it was because I thought DC was kind of more serious, more dark, more cool, like Batman was
the
a
same.
right. Batman's a human being.
Much the only Marvel that I really got into.
But I liked X-Men. But X-Men had that thing where there was so much social and cultural stuff right on the very tip of it, not like a lot of this superhero stuff where you have to go down a little bit deeper. You
Mhm.
know, with X-Men, they were right away trying to make laws to ban them. And you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
it was like real life a little. I felt it had a little grittier. Um, but I fell off. So I stopped, and it had been, by the time these movies started, it had been a good, gosh, I don't know, 25, 20 years since I had like read comics or been into comics. So I kept up with stories because I'm a geeky type of individual. But a lot of this stuff that happened after, say, the end of the 90s, maybe it was only 10 years because these movies started a little bit earlier than I'm given credit for. Um, and I had a real hard time when these movies came out, man. You know, I talked a little bit about it before. My background is I went to college and went for film studies and English. And my English was really that I loved film and journalism. I was kind of a film and still maintain a little bit today. I'm a bit of a film snob. You know what I'm saying? Like the foreign directors, the silent film. Like I came up watching that shit and studying
We're
it,
so
you know?
similar. I went to
And
college for film studies too.
yeah, you know, so but I caught a little bit, I think, snobby with these movies. And when they came out, I was kind of like, they're the same Martin Scorsese type of thing, you know, the business side of it. It's all they make. They're taking over everything. There's no mid-level dramatic films anymore. And I kind of blame these movies for it. Long story short, I got over that bullshit because I think it is bullshit. And I think one day Martin Scorsese will remember the days when he enjoyed like a Western or something. You know what I mean? You can't
Mhm.
blame the genre for the business. We do have an issue with blockbusters, but I don't really think that you can blame the stories of Marvel for that issue. That's an economic issue, a business issue. That's a different subject. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, it
I'm
makes a lot of
sure you'd
sense.
agree that there's problems with Hollywood, the way movies are made, the cost, the fact that it has to be $300 million, you know, like this is not good for filmmakers, you know. But that doesn't mean that they haven't done an absolutely incredible job with these movies. And from actually talking to you about the DC TV shows, and hearing and seeing you on Facebook watching with your son, this was a couple of years ago, right? It got me
Mhm.
back into it, and you help open my eyes and other people too to be a little less prejudiced against these movies, a little, you know, and kind of open my heart to them. I got to admit, the first time I watched all of them, I don't know that I was fully paying attention, right? Because I thought it doesn't matter. Who cares, right? The guy in the suit said something to the other guy in the tights. It doesn't, it's not going to pan out to anything. Now going back, I'm seeing all the connections and the way that they built this over the period of time. And I'm really more and more impressed after WandaVision. I'm more and more impressed. And I just really am pretty excited to kind of talk about what you think, where they're headed, some of the choices they've made, because I no longer really have that attitude of anything negative associated towards these films. And I'm still maintain my film snobbery. Okay. I love Kurosawa. Okay.
Did you see how
You
much
know,
Kurosawa stuff's on HBO Max?
I know. Yeah. It's great. The
Yeah, they got like
Criterion. Yeah.
five or six of his films on there. I was like,
Yeah,
holy shit,
there's a lot of great HBO Max is my favorite. That's a great streaming
it
service,
really
man.
is.
It
It
has
really is.
a lot of depth to it, you know.
Way more than I
Um,
thought.
and they have a lot of Criterion stuff, you know. And I
Mhm.
maintain you can like both of these things,
You can.
you know. This is one of the things, so much of the talk is it on in film Twitter or film whatever, is people making fun of these films when I think that they're really missing out on a lot of the great work they've done. And one thing I'd like to ask you is, um, I've kind of struggled to think in my mind how to classify the films, the sagas, how they compare to the comics. So when you're watching like Ant-Man, right? Does it, in your mind, are you watching like, are you looking at a comic book? Are you looking at a story told over 5 or 6 comic books? Like, how in your mind does it translate from the comic world to the film world? And how do you think they've done that?
I don't know if this is gonna completely answer your question, but my approach toward watching them is I try to disassociate them from the comics as best I can. I don't, because I feel like it creates a perception of what I feel like I want to see. Like I don't want to go in there and be like, okay, this is Captain America 3. I sure would like to see blank, or I'd like to see this, or I wonder if they do this story. It's
Right.
like I have a little bit of that, like when we learned in advance that the third Captain America was going to be based on the Civil War story, but for me, I entered that movie not looking for certain aspects of the Civil War story. I went in
Mhm.
just going like, okay, I know generally what this is going to be about, but I'm going to let the Russo brothers tell me the story that they want to tell me. And I approach every single one of these movies like that. I try to go in with as little desire to see the comic books on the screen as possible, and I just hope that they give me something that makes it feel genuine without being stupid. Like I want it to be
Yes.
a good
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
but I wanna look at it and be like, oh, this feels like Ant-Man, or this feels like Spider-Man. But I try to disassociate them from the comics as best as I can. Other than that, in that way.
That is really interesting, because one of the things I'm learning from having known so many of these stories, but like I said, when they do something in Batman, right? So when they bring Ra's al Ghul or his daughter or Bane or whatever into the Batman movies, right? I can say, oh, okay, I read that story, right? I remember this, and I see the way that they're spinning it. You know what I'm saying? Or remixing is the word people like to use, right? How they're remixing it.
Hmm.
I don't remember as concretely with the Avengers and Marvel stuff. I also think there was a lot more of it in the Marvel universe than there was in DC. Like, there was many Batman comics where he was a detective, and it
I missed
wasn't,
that. I
yeah,
missed that.
right. When it
Yeah.
wasn't a mythological deep Raza, like his kid is blah blah blah. It was just fucking Batman being the smartest guy in the world. And in Marvel, they did always tend to do this acid trip shit where everybody's like, you're like, are they an alien superhero god? What the fuck is right? I kind of lost tip with it. So I've appreciated the way people accept the remix in Marvel, and you don't it's not Game of Thrones style where
Right.
people are like, what did you fucking do to Ramsey or Sansa or blah, but like this in the book. And you're like, it's not the fucking book. It's a movie. Shut up and go read the book then. Like, I understand you love it. It's
That's
great.
and that's what I wanted to avoid. I don't like
Yes. Yeah.
I don't even like to hear that. Like, oh, it's not like the book. And that's really just a person's way of showcasing that they've read the book and you haven't. And like
Exactly. Or
that
that
kind of
their
behavior.
purity, they have a purity test. It must achieve
Exactly.
this.
Yeah, and since I don't like to hear that, I don't want to do it. So like it
Yeah.
makes me it forces me to enter in without those expectations. The only time I will go back and refer to something from the comic is if they make what I think is like an incredibly bad decision, and I don't even know if I've seen that off the top of
Mhm.
my head, where it's something like you take something that's like already established as being awesome and then fuck it up. Like I feel
Yeah.
like they kind of did that with the Killing Joke movie that they did. That's the only one where I kind of go like, you probably should have just stuck with the book, because you threw some extra shit in there and not a single person liked it, and it just didn't work as well. And that's like the only example I can think of where I put on my comic snob hat and was like, it's not like the book. But
Yeah.
I try not to do that because I don't like to hear it.
Yeah, and it's harder. I think especially with Marvel, it's a lot harder because so many of the characters have died, been reborn. It's like a soap opera.
Hmm.
So, if someone's going to say, "Oh, they ruined it this way," then you can always say, "Well, look, they're actually leaving room." I'll give you an example. In WandaVision, one of the things that people were most upset with, I felt, or kind of disappointed with, was that Pietro, or Pietro, however you say that,
Hmm.
who was played by Evan Peters, who played Pietro in the Sony X-Men movies, not in the Marvel Cinematic. In the Marvel Cinematic, it was Aaron Taylor Johnson, who, by the way, is married to the director. Do you know that?
Director of
What's
what?
her name is something Taylor Johnson. I can't remember, but she's like 30 years older than him. It's a very
What?
interesting story. Yeah, they met on a movie. You should read up on it.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
really
I
it's
didn't
a
know that.
cool story, actually.
Huh.
But people were disappointed because it turned out he's not actually Pietro. He's some dude named Boner. And as you said in your videos, they did this all for a boner joke. And there's a bunch of people who I listen to talk
I just
about it.
didn't care.
Yeah, you didn't care. But I thought this. See, this is what I'm thinking, right? Even though that is a boner joke, because you have the multiverse, because you're dealing with gods and space and infinity gem, they can do whatever the fuck they want.
Hmm.
So the fact that this guy is boner on our earth does not mean he's not Pietro on another earth. And the
Hmm.
fact that Wanda recognized him when she opened the door, and when he said, "I'm your brother," she accepted him as her brother. Somewhere down deep, she knew in the multiverse that was her brother on another earth, right?
Hmm.
Because the past, the present, the future are one in the multiverse. You know what I'm saying, dude? You're talking
Yeah.
about, right? In like the what is the Ant-Man thing? The
Quantum realm.
quantum realm, of course. So I thought that that was kind of fun, and it led me to have a bit of a chuckle because so many people were disappointed. But in actuality, I wasn't disappointed because I thought that was actually confirmation that of the multiverse, and that she was in connection to it because this guy happened to be in that town, right? That's why
Yeah.
she chose that town, because her brother's multiverse clone lived in it. That's why
That's a
she went
good.
to,
I didn't consider that, but that's pretty good. I thought of
right?
that once at um the second the end credit scene. Did you watch the
Yes. Yeah.
end credit scenes? Yeah, when she's doing the astral projection like Doctor Strange, you can hear the boys' voices. That was the
Yeah.
same thing I thought. I was like, okay, this is just confirmation that the multiverse is still on the
Of
table.
course. Definitely. Oh, of course.
That's fine. That's really all I needed. I didn't think of the
Yeah.
thing that you mentioned about her recognizing him and stuff though. Like that's uh that's pretty good. Yeah.
That's kind of fun. And by the way, that was Westview, New Jersey. And I grew up to Westfield, New Jersey. That was the town next to Springfield, Westfield. That is actually a town in New
Is
Jersey.
Westview a real town?
No, but
Oh, okay.
Westfield is a real town though.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's about, it would be, I don't know. They didn't really say how far they were outside of Manhattan, but if they're about 20 minutes outside of Manhattan, 25, that would be
Oh,
Westfield. Westfield does not look anything like that town, though it is a kind of very like picturesque kind of town. It's a nice town. But so anyway, I enjoy the fact that, and wanted to comment on, having been out of this dialogue for a while, I appreciate the fact that many of the fans like yourself and the people who read the comics and who are watching these movies are very open to these remixes and the way that they move shit around. And I thought that WandaVision did a great job for me of exploiting that with this new multiverse and how they're going to play with all this stuff. And I'm pretty excited about it, man. I generally was not. I was a little bit. Were you that excited? Like after spoiler alert, Iron Man and Captain America are gone. Did you feel a little bit let down? Like, what are they going to do next? What's all this like what is it, the Eternals, or
Yeah.
right? Or were you excited about this, or how are you
They
feeling about this next stage?
they built up 20 some odd films of respect for out of me. So like I didn't feel any kind of way about losing. Aside from the fact that I thought Robert Downey Jr. was great, I thought Chris Evans was great, and if they don't come back, that's fine with me as well. But I have faith in what they're doing now. So like, because I think the turning point for me was Guardians of the Galaxy. I looked at Guardians of the Galaxy and I was like, I don't know about this one, because that was something that I was unfamiliar with as a fan. I feel like that must have come around after I stopped reading comics or something. I didn't know. I'd never heard of Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't know shit about them. I saw the trailer. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't know about it. And Guardians of the Galaxy is probably in most people's top 5 or 10 out of the MCU films. Like they nailed it. And so like at that point, I was kind of just like, I'm gonna trust their judgment as far as what they think I should see, or what they think I will be entertained by. So like, even though I'm not sitting here like, oh man, I was really hoping for an Eternals movie, and they're like, oh, we're gonna do the Eternals. Yes. Like, I wasn't thinking about that. Like, and even after announcing it, I'm not like, oh, the Eternals. Yes. I don't care. I'm just like, I at this point, I pretty much fully trust them to make the right decisions on what films they want to make, who they want to cast, who they want to have be their directors, because there's been plenty of times where I've looked at some of these decisions and thought, I don't know about this one. And they, by and large, pull it off. So I'm excited just to see what they do now, because the Infinity Saga was such a huge undertaking. And I think, by most accounts, they fucking crushed it. So like, okay, now that you've done that, where do you go from here? Now you can bring in these Fox XMen properties, or all these other characters that they weren't able to use during the Infinity Saga. They can interject that. You can get bigger villains like Thanos. Like there's so much potential. And now with WandaVision, they've proven themselves to be even more ambitious than I thought. Like, that was an ambitious undertaking for a 9-episode television show that you're going to plop down in between your first saga and whatever you plan on doing next. I looked at that on paper, just like, why are they making a show about Wanda and Vision, and why are they giving it such a shitty name? But like, now it's coming out of that. It's like, this was really this is pretty courageous of a television show to make. And if they're going to put that kind of effort into their television shows, you can't help but be excited, because now we're going to look at it like we're going to get probably really good movies and really good television shows for like characters that maybe we might not expected to see in movies. Like, they're doing a Moon Knight television show. Like, I'm looking forward to that. So I'm like,
Oscar Isaac, man, and Ethan Hawke.
Yes,
that's
I'm like,
great.
they're not playing around. So
yeah,
you can't help but be excited.
I really agree with your sentiment so much. Like I said, I was snobbish towards these films, and there's many hours of audio of me going off or making fun of these things, and I will just say it again, I was fucking wrong. I was wrong, and I do love being wrong, because when you're wrong, it gives you an opportunity to get this joyous feeling of being happy and enjoying something that you never thought you would. And that's the way I feel. I mean, in the last month, because of WandaVision, I rewatched almost all the movies, both of the Guardians of the Galaxy, both of the Infinity Wars, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Ragnarok. I went back to the original Captain America, and I opened myself up and really saw the way that they plotted this out. And to me, I really think that when you put Marvel against DC, and you see two distinct ways of going about, which is an auteur-driven, which I prefer, way, which is what DC did. We're going to give a property to a person and let them create. Okay. And what Marvel did, which is, no, we are creating a factory where we make these movies and they have similar tone, they have similar effects, looks, camera angles, everything that unites them, which is more like a TV series. Because in a sense, when I sit and I stream them, when I'm watching them on Disney Plus, when I watch the Infinity Saga, I feel like I'm watching a TV series. I really do. That's just me. And I understand the difference between film and TV, and it's blurring and streaming, and we don't have to get into that whole conversation. But that's how I watch it. I would watch like 45 minutes. It took me like a couple nights, and I actually enjoyed it more that way. And I was able to soak in the characters. And when I think in my head, the thing that WandaVision did, and like you said, that it was so ambitious, the thing that was so ambitious to me is the characterization, the depth, the acting, the way that they allowed I know you had an issue with the first two episodes being a little bit of the same running joke, which I can agree with you there. Like I understand a lot of people are like, be patient, let them build it. Well, you know what though? We did kind of get the point. They could have given us a larger first episode, right? And I think we would have understood the point. But
I would have been more satisfied, but I wouldn't give anybody shit for liking those first two either.
There you go. See, and you can appreciate that they never had that time before, right? Because they had to get to the next fucking scene in the movie, and they didn't want the movie to be 7 hours long, which I really wouldn't mind at this point. And this is what I feel like WandaVision was, because the effects, the acting, the writing, the direction were all on par with the films.
Yeah.
I don't really think you could take a clip from WandaVision and a clip from, I don't know, say like, Thor Dark World and put them next to each other and you'd go, that's a TV show, that's a film. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think could say that they're equal. So do you find yourself making that kind of film to TV comparison? Because I've always wanted them to do more TV. I wish that they had this much time, that I had cared so much about Wanda and Vision before this, but they just literally logistically didn't have time.
I think that I wanted to see the television more, not just off of like, okay, we got these movies, let's see how television works. It was more like, once they gave me a taste of kind of what they might entertain doing, like, so the Netflix shows, the Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, and like I feel like most of those shows were flawed in fairly substantial ways, but by and large, I liked what they were trying to do with those shows. So I thought, like, if they could make something, if they could get television shows that are on par with the films, like, think of how they could just totally start on world domination at that point.
Yeah, the Netflix one is unfortunate because for some dumb reason, they decided to give Jeff Loeb the TV department and keep Feige as the head of the film, and they didn't let them join. And I think that's why you can see the difference between, in my mind, WandaVision's really the first Marvel TV show.
Yeah.
Because those Netflix, they had different production companies. They came through different editors. Feige didn't have to approve everything. And in many ways, I would not be surprised to find out that they will be considered a multiverse property rather than existing in the main timeline in the future. Because that Disney wants to buy everything back. They're bringing everything. Even I just watched New Mutants. Did you check that one out?
I didn't, and I wanted to, but like everybody said it was so bad that it made
me
less interested. But it sounded like it was depicted as like it was gonna be like a XMen horror movie kind of deal. And I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of cool.
They tried, man. They brought in the dude who directed The Fault in Our Stars, so they were trying to make it more emotional and like teen angsty, but really all it comes off as, and it went through several edits, I understand, is basically like an hour-long Twilight Zone episode It's only like an hour and 20 minutes long. It's not you should check it out. It's not that bad. I caught it the other night,
Huh.
but it's not going to have any connection. Like you, I was a huge fan of X Factor, X-Men, New Mutant. Like I loved all that kind of stuff. Because when I was a kid, I would be like, maybe I'm a mutant. Right? You must have thought that too, man. Come on.
I never thought maybe I'm a
Come
mutant,
on.
but I thought I wish I was. I always wanted to be. I always wanted to be like Wolverine.
Really? Okay.
I
Okay.
always. I have been. I always was, and continue to this day to be fascinated by the ability to regenerate.
Interesting.
That's always
Okay.
seems so cool to me. Like,
That's cool.
And then I'm like, oh, they did like. I feel like he had his creation was just so different than everything else. Like it seems like you had SpiderMan, he got bit by a spider, and Batman, he lost his parents, and everything seemed kind of like this generic kind of like everybody's origin story seemed kind of similar, but the idea of like coding somebody's skeleton and adamantium and like I'm like, what the fuck? This guy is so fucking cool.
It is, and I love Wolverine too, because like Project X, and it's not only superhero, it's like secret government conspiracy
exactly,
shit.
Exactly.
Yes, and that's why and that's why I liked Winter Soldier and Civil War. I enjoyed. I mean, I gained a real appreciation from watching that stuff. But I love the mutant stuff. I always wanted to have. I would always like, since Star Wars was my original like geek love, and I used to sit and meditate like Luke Skywalker, and I'd sit there with my sister and like go like this and just try to move something for like an man.
I've tried to turn off the light using the Force like like within the past couple of weeks. I've tried that, so
it could work, man.
I know, I'm like, maybe it just hasn't kicked in yet.
So I was always into like people who could like shoot shit out of their hands and kind of like go whoosh, or teleport. I always loved teleporting. Teleporting has always been like a dream to me, that I could throw like a little circle and jump into it. Like who was that who had those little teleport that's in the New Mutants? She had those, she could like kind of do like this with her finger and like create quantum space or something, and then step into it and then go to somewhere else. I love that kind of shit. Yeah, it's a bunch. I mean, that's the thing, is there's so many, and that's why it's enjoyable to watch these shows. I also, as far as like waiting for new people to come up or people to show up, I like one of the things I liked about WandaVision is that it didn't rely on like the Luke Skywalker moment. I appreciated that the moments of depth came not from a cameo or the hint of what's to come. They saved that for the credit sequences. And really, it was more about the relationship that they had together. And to get back to the film versus TV thing, I'm really looking forward to Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think that it's going to be a fun return to that actiony buddy cop kind of cool stuff. It's going to have a little bit less of this LSD tripped out. Oh wait, that's the thing I wanted to talk about. Okay.
LSD, yeah.
Yes, I want to talk about LSD. Really? You've never done LSD?
I don't even know. I wouldn't even know how to acquire it. I have no idea.
Well, we'll talk about that.
That's not a black drug.
I don't know about that. Actually, the first person ever gave me LSD was black. So half black, half Puerto Rican, my man Thaxton. So that was the first guy who gave me LSD. But I did get mushrooms from a white guy named Micah. That's the first time I got mushrooms. He was a deadhead. So that totally makes sense, right? Like some Jewish guy who follows around the Grateful Dead and gave me mushrooms in New Jersey. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I am interested in, before we talk about Falcon Winter Soldier a little bit, I'm interested in the WandaVision stuff, the Doctor Strange, the Ragnarok, because one of the things that I always did appreciate about Marvel is having grown up in Jersey and just even hearing stories going to different comic conventions, in Manhattan. Man, I can remember going to like God, man, let me tell you, dude, it was not like Comic-Con back in the day. I really remember going to like the basement of shitty hotels in New York that I'd make bring my dad bring me to, and he'd be like, "Stay next to me. Those guys look weird. Like, you know, if they open their jacket, don't look down." Like he'd say shit like that. So, you know what I'm saying, dude? You know what I mean, man. But a lot of this stuff we're getting into now, and a lot of the Doctor Strange, Eternals, all this shit was written by a bunch of mostly dudes tripping on acid in Manhattan, working for Marvel. And I don't know that that's as appreciated in the general public as it should be. Like
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not
look it
surprising
up.
to hear. It's not surprising to hear it, but I did not know that.
Yes, there was a book written about it, and there's many articles written about how the Marvel writers and illustrators and all that, and all this Doctor Strange stuff, and a lot of the Eastern philosophy that they got into was from them being influenced by the drug revolution, and then later tripping out on acid and creating all these crazy stories. And when I kind of Ragnarok really brought me into. Are you a fan? Ragnarok is a bit divisive. I found some people love it, some people think it was too funny. What's your take on it?
I fall in between.
Okay.
I like Ragnarok as a film in and of itself, but I didn't like it as a film within the Thor franchise, if that makes sense. I feel like
It does.
Ragnarok was not what I was looking for in my Thor. If Ragnarok was like a Guardians movie, then it to me it fit more in that vein. And I don't dislike Guardians. I mean, I've talked about them earlier, and I don't dislike Thor, but it's like it felt like too much of a intersection between my Guardians and my Thor. And I even though the Thor movies are I think everybody among the least favorite in the MCU for most people, I still kind of go for that style of film. Like I like Greek mythology,
Mhm.
all that kind of shit. I dig that, and Ragnarok didn't really give me much of that. So I like
Yeah,
it as a movie. I don't like it as a Thor as the third entry in the Thor franchise.
I understand, because the first two were, in a sense, they had those elements and flourishes of costume dramas and period pieces.
Mhm.
Whereas Ragnarok, you're absolutely right. I mean, it was definitely, they took acid and made a Thor movie. It was
It's far and
great.
away
I
the
mean,
best of the three. Like
Jeff Goldblum. I mean, I was and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which I really disliked the second one when I first saw it, and now I watched it again and I was like, this is funny as hell. They
I
really
have
are.
not seen it a second time, and I didn't like it the first time either.
I
And
think if you
I have
watch
yet
it
to revisit it.
again, you might laugh if smoke a little something, have a little night,
I purposely skipped it when I did my I do a marathon. I did a marathon before every Avengers film.
Oh, okay.
So like I've seen almost every film in the Infinity Saga multiple times, except that one and a couple others. Because by the time Endgame and Infinity War came around, it was just too many films. It was like, this is going over several days, so I gotta trim some stuff out. So Guardians 2 always got trimmed out. So I haven't seen it a second time.
I mean, I do have a great love for Bautista. I think that dude is funny as hell. I mean, I
He
loved his
is.
stupid Amazon movie when he was with a little kid, and man, he cracks me up. The part in that movie when he's sitting there with the woman who has the antenna, I can't remember her
Mantis.
name. Yeah, Mantis, and she's so beautiful too. Like, you can tell if they took that makeup on or off. I mean, hell, I'd do her with the antenna. And he's like, he's just like, "You are ugly. You make me want to vomit."
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And it's like, why did they go there? And then I'm reminded of like James Gunn's crazy tweets and everything. And you come to see the way humor can be portrayed differently. Like, that was very funny. And those films, there are a lot of comedy in them. But again, I appreciate the psychedelic nature of them, and I'm very much looking for Doctor Strange too. And I never appreciated that as much with the comic books. I like the art. My friend Lou is a great artist, and that was his favorite kind of art that they did for the Doctor Strange books and all those kind of weird multiverse Eternal books. I never really appreciated them, but I am very much looking forward to, and I love the way WandaVision set that up with her hearing her children's voices. Obviously, she has to create or find the multiverse in which those children exist, right?
Mhm.
Because they do. And just like I love the way Vision had to use White Vision to get out, right?
Mhm.
He, by putting his own memories, it was like a Westworld shit. He
Yeah.
downloaded himself into him, and he became him, and he got out. I thought that stuff was really fantastic, and I'm much more excited and look forward to talking about and watching and seeing with my son too, these new films that they have coming out. The Spider-Man films too. I forgot that the end of Far From Home, that Jonah, Jonah Jameson, whatever, pops up and exposes him and tells everybody he's Peter Parker. You know,
And that was the first time they introduced someone from the other universe, because he played him in the Sony versions,
yeah,
the
and it
the
made you
Tobey
think.
Maguire versions, I should say.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it
like
made,
that was cool.
yes, it was very, very cool stuff that I'm looking forward to. But I know I don't have you for much longer.
Oh,
Before we go, what are you looking forward to most? I know you're going to be covering Falcon and Winter Soldier,
hmm.
and I'm actually contemplating doing the same. I don't know. My kid's going back to school. I might jump in, maybe something I'll talk to you about, because I'm interested in kind of living this on the week to week. I love WandaVision, but what are you looking forward to, and how do you think that this is going to tie into where we're headed with the MCU?
Oh, that's a loaded question, the second one. But what I'm looking forward to the most I'm looking forward to all of these television shows, because I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with these, lesser known characters that they don't necessarily want to have them in like a big film, or being an Avenger. But there's such great content and such great stories to tell. So I'm looking forward to, like, almost like when Disney did that one night where they announced everything they're doing for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Like almost everything they announced was awesome sounding to me. I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to see all that shit. So I'm really looking forward to the television shows. I'm really looking forward to the Doctor Strange sequel. Really looking forward to Spider-Man, the third Spider-Man. And then I'm looking forward to kind of like what new ones they're going to introduce. Like I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the Eternals and Shang-Chi, and they've cast those films pretty well. And then I'm looking forward to the Blade with Mahershala Ali. I don't I
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
That's
that one
amazing.
that one
Yeah.
really stuck with me. Like, wow, I'm curious, because that's one where there's not too many people that have complaints about the Wesley Snipes version. So they still said, we want to do this again, and I'm like, wow, how they plan on improving upon the Wesley Snipes shit? Like, oh, count me in.
You got to think that he's Wesley Snipes' son, or I don't know how the age where they have to. That's why I think this multiverse thing is so great, because they literally can bring in any shit that was ever made that's in any way connected,
Hmm.
and kind of use that story, which is what the comics do, which is what soap operas do, and I think that's cool. But I want to ask you, how does Falcon Winter Soldier play into this? What is this going to be about? Are
I
they
feel like
trying to figure out who's going to be Captain America, or who's the leader
that's
of the team, or
that's kind of what I feel like is going to happen. But I feel like it's ultimately, at least just guessing, that it is kind of meant to be almost kind of like a buddy cop television show, because that was the vibe they started to have in those, I'd say probably in like starting from like Winter Soldier
yeah.
on. They kind of gave them this playful kind of like jab at one another, but they're really cool kind of deal. But I do think that ultimately, like probably like by the end of, I think it's only 6 episodes, but I think ultimately it is going to play into Sam probably stepping into that Captain America role as opposed to the Falcon role. But I'm looking forward to that one, just like you said, because it feels like it's going to be kind of like a return to form. And that's not to say that I don't think anybody's upset with what they did with WandaVision, but a return to fun action, comedy, but on a keeping the scale of the films, but on something that's more digestible week to week. So like
Yeah.
I'm excited to see. I'm really excited for this one. Like that one and the Loki series are there's a lot of room for Marvel to do some really cool shit with those two.
Definitely Loki, which actually debuts on my birthday, June 11th.
June,
That's
I'll
a
say
lot.
June
That's a
something.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
and one last thing.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to how they do villains, because like you have a lot of comic properties, and that's a big knock on a lot of the MCU films, was that the villains were not compelling, or like it's like when you get your Killmongers or your Thanos, and people are like, yeah, oh, these are awesome, but like there's like 23 films, and a lot of people didn't like the villains in those. But
right.
I'm like, with buying the Fox properties and whatnot, like I'm really excited to see what villains they introduce, because now they're going to be able to introduce Doctor Doom, or like Galactus or something. Like like that's
Yes.
one of my
Yeah.
things that I'm thinking about, is like, how are they, because they got to try it at some point, right? How are you going to bring Galactus into live action? Like that is an exciting thought to me. So like I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with some of the more well-known Marvel villains.
Yeah. And they've laid some foundation for that. Like, I didn't even pick up on Nowhere in Guardians, how that is basically the huge head of one of the what not I think it was the Eternals, or it's like it's basically they're mining the brain matter of a creature that has the head the size of a planet.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to go back and pick up on this shit, man. They laid
Where
a
is it?
they
Where'd you pick that up? Was that is
that's
that in
that's
Infinity War?
no, that's in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That's what Nowhere
Oh,
is.
that's
That's
why I didn't
where the
pick up on it.
collector, yeah, that's where the collector lives, or maybe it's in 1 or 2, but that's where the collector lives. And that's like in the huge head of one of these creatures. And I think
Hmm.
that trippy stuff was bothering me a little bit, but the way, like you said, I trust them. The way they're able to meld tones, like it is kind of, when you think about a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and then you think about like Civil War, those are two very different types of films. To
Hmm.
be able to tonally have them join together is really awesome. And that's what I'm looking for in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Will there be any multiverse sorcery type of crossover stuff, or is it going to be straight up action? I want to see how they can tonally mix those, because they did a great job in WandaVision of doing some of the introducing sword and a little bit of that intrigue conspiracy shit,
Hmm.
which I do enjoy. But hey, listen, I think you got to get going.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on. This was just kind of I appreciate you just like chatting with me about the MCU, because like I said, I think that on this feed we're going to get more of it. I actually might put this up on, I'm thinking of turning the kind of Westworld Theory Cast feed into like a all-inclusive sci-fi Marvel
Mm.
crazy feed.
Yeah. Get to
So this
talking
might,
about dark and all kinds of shit like that. That'd be pretty cool.
ooh,
Yeah.
oh man, as soon as you say that, I hear the theme song in my head. Hold on tight. Don't be afraid. All right, Mike, tell us where we can find you and anything else you want to say before we go.
All right. So you can find me One Mic Podcast. That's on anywhere you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that good stuff. You can find me. You have to search One Mic on YouTube. I don't have enough followers to be able to get a unique URL, so it's not like
Soon.
youtube.com/one mic. You're gonna have to search it, but it's there. And obviously you can find if you go into the Daily DVR Facebook group, you'll probably find one of my videos you can link to as well. And then I do 2 other podcasts. What Up Though podcast I've been doing for about 6-7 years with my friend Otis. And then I also started, well, I didn't start it, but me and a few others started a new podcast called Garbage Opinions, where it's kind of like a debate podcast. We get a topic, we get sides, and we kind of like jokingly argue about these topics. You can find that on Twitter at a garbage podcast, and Garbage Opinions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff.
Stitcher,
Mainly
wherever.
Stitcher.
All
But
your
yeah.
favorite podcast apps.
Yeah.
DJ Tim Hines is on that with you too, man.
Yes,
Shout out.
DJ's on it. We give
Yeah.
DJ if you like hearing DJ get shitted on, you'll love it. We treat DJ Tim Hines like shit on this show, man. I'm telling you. He
Well,
takes it
he's a
great. He takes
tough
it great though.
motherfucker,
But man,
dude.
we treat him like shit. We treat him like shit.
He's from Strong Island. He can take it, dude.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal for him. Well, thank you so much for being on. Thank you everyone for listening, downloading, watching this here video. Much appreciated. You can check us out, of course, at dvrpodcast.com, patreon.com/DVR. Thanks all the patrons. Heath and I are still doing Mindhunter. It's coming out on the Patreon soon. And check us out, our other podcast, Two Not So Rad Dads, where we talk about being a dad. One of these days, we'll have to have you on the dad podcast, man.
Boy, do I have some stories there.
Yeah, that'll be fun. All right. Well, thanks again for listening, everybody. Peace.
See ya.